Hi, I'm Scott, Product Marketing Manager at AMETEK Crank, and I'm excited to be providing you with a look at some of the great new enhancements being introduced with Storyboard 7.1. With me today is Rodney, Manager of R&D at AMETEK Crank.
Hey, how's it going, Scott?
Rodney, so today many organizations are looking for ways to reduce the costs of the products they are developing. One such way is in the choice of hardware they choose to use with their products. More specifically, the choice of using lower cost microcontrollers. However, even as their processing power and their resources expand, MCUs can present development challenges that must be overcome in order for them to develop beautiful, small, yet sophisticated products on MCU hardware. So Rodney, what enhancements with Storyboard 7.1 can developers look forward to that can further help optimize their ability to develop beautiful, sophisticated GUI applications that consumers love on MCU-based hardware?
Well, Scott, let me take you through that. I'll do a live demo here of Storyboard 7.1, and we'll show off some of the features that we've added in this release that can help you do that.
Perfect.
All right, so here's Storyboard 7.1. I've loaded it in. I'm going to use the Watch PSD that we have sort of internally as the basis for this. This is a demo app that we've built up to run in a wearable space. It runs on a circular screen. So you can see we've got a lot of watch faces, some of the simple features that you usually see on a watch, like your BPM and stuff like that. I'm just going to take you through, what sort of features we've added to Designer so that you can quickly build this up into an actual usable sort of device that you could run on your hardware. So one of the first things you'll notice is that this is a circular display. So, you may not want your text to be right across here. Maybe you want it to go around the edge of that circular display. So one of the things that we've added in is the ability to sort of add a shape for your text to follow. So I'm gonna basically select this time here, the control for this time, and I'm gonna reposition it because we want it to go around the outside. And right now we're very locked into that spot. So I'm just gonna move this here to be 0. And this to be 0. And then what I'm going to do is make it 392 by 392, which is the size of my watch. And you can see that the text is moved off the screen now. We can't even see it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a circle control to this control, or circle render extension. Sorry, my mistake. And I'm going to click this button, which is align using render extension. So what this does is if the next render extension in the list is something that contains sort of a path, the text will follow that path. A circle is something that has a path inside of Storyboard. So if I click align, you can see now the text goes along the edge. Now it's a little hard to read because we're overlapping that image. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the circle here and I'll just move it, I'll add 20 here to that. So it moves down a little bit, and then I'll add 20 here and moves over. And you can see very quickly we can start to build out, this nice circular look to the text as it goes around the outside of the watch. And that allows you to quickly build up a UI that works for your device, because there are a lot of devices out there that are going with sort of different shaped screens, especially in the smaller MCU market. Now, another thing that we've done to quickly allow UI developers to sort of get up and running in their UI so that they can spend time on working on their back end and not focusing so much on the UI is the ability to create tables inside of Storyboard without having to do a lot of the work that we used to have to do, where you'd have to create the table, set up all the variables, set up all the render extensions inside the table yourself. What we've done is we've added in a conversion menu entry, so I can just select all these controls, and these fitness activities are the basis for my table. I can just select all of them, and I can say that I want to convert them to a scrolling layer. which would mean they'd put all these controls on a layer, make the layer scrollable, and then you could add controls to it dynamically if you wanted to take that approach. But for this demo, I'm going to create them to a scrolling table. And what this does is it converts all those controls into a table. You see that all the controls are gone now, and I'm left with this table. And the table has all the variables that it would need so that you can change the dynamic content inside of this table so that if you want to add new activities, you can do that. Now, what happens if you don't really know what those activities are ahead of time and you don't really want to hard code them into, into your UI? What if you want them to be, somewhat dynamic? We now have the ability inside of Storyboard to specify a data source for a table. And I'm gonna walk through a sort of the import export process. So you can export the data from this table and give it to somebody else who would know what those activities are supposed to be. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna, export this, and I'm gonna just export it to my desktop, and I'm gonna call it fitness.json. So now I've created that fitness.json file. And if I go take a look at it, inside of your favorite editor, you'll see it's a JSON file that describes the elements that are in the table. Now I could add in a new element here if I want. So if I want to add in, maybe skiing here is downhill skiing, and I want to add in, cross country skiing, I could create that in here, and then the table will automatically pick it up. But just to sort of show how easy it is, I'm just going to basically, switch that to running a lot. We're going to be running a lot. That's our fitness that we're going to do. So I've saved that. I'm going to go back to Storyboard, and I'm going to import the fitness JSON. Attaches to that table. Now you'll notice the text didn't change. So you're probably wondering, well, why didn't the text change? I'm going to synchronize the table now, so that there's the synchronize step that we're going to follow, so that the content is now synchronized with that table. So it's loaded in that JSON file. It's picked up all the things that are in that file, and it's made the table match the data that is in that file. So that's how you can quickly build up lists of activities or things that need to be in your UI, quickly inside of Designer. Also, if you need to do it dynamically and programmatically through Lua, we've got a create Lua data source button here that will go through and generate the Lua code that you would need to be able to interact with that table programmatically at runtime. So now, we've got a data source for this table that's been created for you. You can actually, reference data source and everything that's in it and modify what's inside of data source. So if you want to change these on the fly based on what screen you're on, you can do that. And we populate the code inside of this Lua file that allows you to call functions to interact with that table and the data that it's created. So this has all been done for you so that you don't have to go through as the developer and set all this up. Designer's taking care of all of it for you, and you can focus on just what you want to do with that data. You don't have to worry about actually creating how the data is going to get into that table. So this quickly speeds up that approach.
Man, both those two new additions, I can easily see them being used across many different vertical markets and different types of GUI applications, not only just wearables, but really helps a lot in a wearable space when you have small amount of real resource on that screen. You really need to condense a lot of information. What else have we done to really kind of reduce the amount of effort or it takes to develop some GUI applications?
So one of the other things we've done is we've enhanced our ability to use components inside of Storyboard. So we've always had this concept of a component. It's a UI piece to your UI that you can reuse throughout your UI. But there was some roadblocks that we have inside of Designer when you were using these components, and we've done our best to remove those roadblocks. So what we've done now is the ability to actually take an element inside of the UI. You could always create a component, but what we've done is allowed you to actually now change it. So this was one of the roadblocks that we had. Once you created the component, it was locked in, and if you wanted to make a small modification to it, you couldn't. So you very quickly would get stuck with the components that you've created. So not anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create this vibrant layer here. I'm just going to change it, and I'm going to add in a group at the top here because I want all of this, I want all of these things to be inside of my new component. So I've got all these controls that sort of make up this watch face that I've got. So I want all of those to be in my component. So I'm just going to basically drag them all into this group here. And then I'm going to right click on the group and I'm going to say create new component. And I'm going to call this the watch face. And as far as a component description, it's a watch face. Yeah. So that's what I've created here. So now that I've got this, there's no additional resources, but if there was some other image, like perhaps there was an up-down state inside of this component that you needed, you could select some extra images or fonts. You know, maybe there's a state where this font goes to an italic or something like that, but I don't need that. I'm good because now that I've created the component, I can share it with other people and they can use it inside their UI. But I don't need anything extra in this component. So I'm just going to click OK and replace the selection with the new template. Yes, I would. So there we go. So now I've created this component. But the thing is that, you know, maybe I've decided that this particular component, while nice, I want to change it up a little bit and use it in other areas inside of the application. So what I can do is I can do edit. And that brings us into here. Now, this is the part that's new. Before you could not add in, you know, sort of new render extensions or new controls inside of the component, and we can do that now. So basically we can go through and we can add a background fill in here. If we're feeling that the vibrant screen is just not vibrant enough, or say we wanted to change this completely and make it now an analog watch face as opposed to a digital watch face, we can now go through and make those changes. So, you know, full disclosure, I am not a UI person. I'm a developer, and I think that means that somewhere in my DNA, it means that I'm color challenged. So I'm going to make this look, you know, somewhat ugly, but I'm just trying to demonstrate the ability to do something here. So I'm not going to use black. I'm not that silly. Plus, you probably wouldn't see it when I actually put it out there because the background for everything else is black. But what I'll do is I'll pick, you know, hot pink or bright purple or something because, you know, that's going to leave a mark. So now I've saved that component. I'm going to overwrite the existing component. Click OK. I'm not going to update the current one. We can leave that one the way it is. But if I were to drag this component out into, you know, a screen, you can see now I can drag that component out and reuse it in multiple places all over. And the hot pink is hurting my eyes, so I'm just going to undo that at this point and take it out of what I did. Sorry, just a second. There, take that out. So yeah, that's another thing that we've done where we can quickly create reusable components inside of your UI so that you can drag them out, use them, modify them, and update them and share them as you see fit.
Yeah, definitely the ability to modify components now, those pre-built or custom built components really helps with their reusability. And I can really see how it can really help speed up application development, you know, especially if you have a lot of kind of core widgets that you use across many different elements. But saying that though, I can also see that many of our customers have, you know, numerous amounts of screens within their GUI applications. Have we done anything to really help simplify that for them?
Yeah, we have. So one of the things that you know, is hard with this you know, top-down layout to the screen layout is you can't really see the flow of your UI or envision how your UI is going to flow or look as it's going through. So what we've done is we've added a couple things in here that allow you to get to that state. So the first thing that that's been added into Designer is you can actually create what we call working sets of screens. So let's say as the UI developer, which wouldn't happen because we've seen my hot pink component that I did, but let's just say that somebody did hire me to be a UI developer or UI designer. Let's say it was my job to look after the watch faces, right? And my job is to make sure that the watch face sort of UI flow is the proper flow. So I'm going to go through, and because I'm only concerned with the watch faces, I'm just going to go through my application here, and I'm just going to select the watch face specific screens, and then I'm going to call the working set name watch faces, and I'm going to finish. And what you'll see once I apply that working set is that all the other screens have disappeared. So we've removed all the noise of the things that I'm not concerned about, and I can focus just on the watch faces inside of this application. So that's been done. So now I'm working on that. But it still doesn't help with the idea of what the UI flow is supposed to look and feel like. So we've added inside of Designer the ability to sort of drag your screens around now and position them however you like. So let's say in this watch, we're going to have like a couple of drag animations where we're going to drag up and down to switch the watch face. So I'm going to click on this button here at the top, which is the freeform layout button. And when I click on that button, it allows me to drag things around inside of this editor so that I can position them so I can visualize what the flow of the UI is going to look like. So I'm just going to shrink this down. You don't have to. It still works at 100% or even higher, but just so that you guys can see, sort of how I'm dragging things around, what it looks like. I'm just going to shrink it down. So let's say that the start screen that I was going to have, the start watch face that I was going to have is this one here. So I can now drag this out over here. And this is my starting point. Now, let's say if I drag up, I want to go to this nice looking royal analog screen. Yeah, that one looks good. And then if I go drag to the left, I'm going to go to this digital screen here. And if I drag to the right, I'm going to go to this digital screen, position that over there. And you can see the guidelines kind of pop up as I'm going through and line them up so that, they're all sort of centered and where I want them to be. And then I can put this one down at the bottom. So now you can visualize what your UI looks like and how it's going to flow through and how people would get to different screens. If I drag to the right, I'm going to go here. If I drag to the top, I'm going to go here. Using the screen drag transition that we have inside of Storyboard, you can, drag to different screens and you can see, okay, this is what my UI would look like as I'm going through to the different screens.
That is awesome. I can totally see a lot of these powerful capabilities, or powerful enhancements, I should say, that were added, really helping out development teams, like I said, across all different vertical markets, but in particular for those that are really building or looking to build sophisticated UIs on MCU devices. So just before we wrap things up, what about the workflow? Have we done anything really to help improve the workflow for developers working on MCU-based devices?
Yeah, we have. So one of the things that we got some feedback on with Designer was that the export process, especially in the MCU case, because we had this idea of a resource configuration for how the resources should be exported to the device, there was an editor to set that up, and the feedback we received was it felt a little disjointed, right? I work in this editor to set up how the resources are going to be exported, but then I go to a dialog to actually control the export. And when you are working across a lot of teams, if one team is sort of determining how things are supposed to be exported, but the team that's actually building the UI and exporting the UI doesn't know that you set up that configuration, you could end up exporting things in the wrong way, and it could lead to some confusion about what's actually supposed to be happening when you deploy to the target. So what we've done is we've streamlined that process, and we've moved all of that exporting configuration into the actual dialog. So now when we launch the dialog to export, you can see here that, I've got this resource header set up. So, we can select whatever we want as the export packaging method, but it's tied now to the resource configuration. It's in the actual same dialog. There's no need to do it someplace else and then pull it into here or reference it here. Everything can be done inside of this dialog. So when I go to the resource configuration, I can see, yes, here's all the, options globally that I've got for images. And, I can go in and then change them if I want for specific images still and go through. And we still have this idea of an application footprint preview to let you know what impact your choices are going to have on, the memory and the storage when you actually deploy to your device. So for example, you can see right now that my images are going to take up a lot of memory. If I was to load every image in this application, I would take up a lot of memory. So, why not, switch it to be a direct draw sort of format, which is the direct RGB 8888. And now you can see that all my memory is gone, or not gone, but all my memory usage has dropped because the images don't require that memory anymore. And I'm taking up a lot less memory than I was before. So this workflow is a better workflow because it doesn't allow things to sort of get out of sync, and now everything is in lockstep and in the same spot. So if you need to check something, you go to the same spot to see why something may not, be performing the way you're expecting. You can see that all in one spot now.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. I think it really comes in handy when you have multiple people, maybe across different regions that are working together in application. When you hand it off through the different stages for them to kind of know exactly what was done with it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's basically the feedback we got, is that when you have multiple teams and you're trying to collaborate, how do you cut down on the amount of information that you need to share about your project? Well, this is one of the way. You just put it all in the same spot.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you for your time today, Ronnie, and going through just some of the great things that you can expect with 7.1. And I encourage you to give it a try for yourself now by going up and using our 30-day free trial.